What is the most urgent health crisis facing teenagers today? That which cannot be tested on a scan or via a blood test. Across the world, and increasingly in India, teenagers and young adults are reporting high levels of anxiety, depression, loneliness, and self harm. They look and seem fine, but are silently struggling. In this episode of The Thoughtful Medic, we discuss the mental health of the youth in India. What is impacting it? Smartphones, academic pressure, or unrealistic expectations? And the most important question, what can we realistically do as parents, teachers, and friends? What kind of healthy social structure and support can we provide? This is not a psychological issue. This is a public health issue, and it's an urgent one. Hi, I'm Dr. Archana Nayar, and you are tuned into the Thoughtful Medic podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Amit Sen, a child and adolescent psychiatrist with over 35 years of experience. He is the co-founder and director for Children's First. He is a passionate mental health advocate, a TEDx speaker, and has worked across and supported various organizations such as UNICEF and UNHCR. And he is also the founding member of Salam Balak Trust. I'm also fortunate to say that Dr. Sen has been a dear friend of mine for several years and has supported us throughout. With a lot of warmth and respect, I welcome Dr. Amit Sen to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Archana. It's a pleasure to be here indeed, and I'm so looking forward to a very stimulating discussion.
Yes, so
very
am I.
Close to my heart.
Very close to your heart, and you're so passionate about
Yeah.
this. It's not only about the fact that you work in this field, but I know how much advocacy and how much work you do, how much you believe in the cause. So let's begin with the idea of adolescence. Let's actually spend a little time talking about what adolescence is, because there are so many changes. There's such an upheaval, social, physical, emotional, that happens at this age. And sometimes we are challenged to understand what is adolescence and its features and what's actually mental health or their issues relating to mental health disorders. So talk to us about that.
Sure. So, the concept of adolescence has changed over the last couple of decades, perhaps. Earlier people would think that adolescence is the teenage years,
Yes.
13 to 18. And once you become 18 or go past it, you're an adult and you're ready to go in the big bad world. However, a lot of research and understanding in different fields, in the fields of functional imaging and neurodevelopment, in the field of cognitive and emotional development, and of course the socio-cultural, political aspect of the influences that adolescents have to go through, is yet another lens. And when we bring all this together, we figure that adolescence actually starts at 10.
Yes.
Maybe it's earlier sometimes.
Earlier now.
Yes. And indeed, the brain changes start around that time, sometimes even before that. And it goes on till the age of 25 at least, right?
And so we are saying it's not 18. The maturity and the growth is going on till the age of 25.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all these different domains that I talked about, in every aspect, the adolescence is growing, transitioning, adapting, and becoming the person they will eventually become, right? And that's the process, which is complex. It is no doubt pretty long.
Yes.
And it is very nuanced indeed, right? And the interactions between these domains also makes it sometimes challenging, but also very exciting to look at adolescence, because it is a phase when young people, children, youth, they can become the person they want to become and make a significant difference to the world around them. Or they can get into trouble and
Yes.
they can get into all kinds of emotional, mental health challenges and troubles, which we could talk about, right? And what are the determinants which actually lead young people or help them to make choices that make them go towards a direction where they become more self-assured, can define themselves, can talk about who they are,
Yes.
and feel that they connect and belong to the
issue
community
of
around them.
identity, the issue of identity building, when does that start happening in a young adult? When do they start questioning themselves and their identity and its building?
So it starts pretty early, from teenage years. So perhaps from even 13, 14. Definitely by 15, they're asking questions as to where do they belong? Which peer group do they relate to? What are the values in the family? They start challenging all those things. They begin to relate to the world outside them in many ways, through different things like influences of the peer group, the books that they read, the music that they listen to, the TV shows, and the social media these days. All
Yes.
these things begin to impact them
And
in
what
very different.
age? At what age? Because things are also changing so rapidly,
Yeah.
because we'll talk about social media later. But at what age, when you're saying 10 is the time when the transition begins, maybe?
So at 10, kids are now turning around and questioning some of the ways of being or values that a family holds true. They might actually question, say things like, why did you send me to this school? Or they might ask you as to, what makes you, pray twice in a day, or there are so many different things that kids will challenge you for. And also, from being compliant, more compliant, relatively more compliant, and adaptive to the ways of the family,
Family.
they begin to challenge it. So they
Yes.
talk back, they can become rude, they can
And
become
how-
rebellious.
And
And
that's
that starts at 10.
that starts at 10.
Yeah, yeah.
And how, and this is a very interesting point, how do parents handle this? And in the Indian context, what do you think is happening? And you probably know what's happening. And how do you think it should be handled?
So, India, of course, is very diverse, and there are, different spaces. But if you look at the urban population,
Yes.
particularly the ones that we are perhaps relatively more familiar with, then there is, a sudden sense of almost shock and dismay that parents and teachers have when this transition comes, especially for the first time parents. And when, their first
It's the
child is
first
stepping into this,
Yes.
they take time to actually accept and digest what's coming their way, because a lot of what they stood for, or a lot of what they thought was good parenting, that they were doing a good job of bringing up their children, suddenly begins to be
It's questioned.
questioned
It's
by
questionable.
by their child.
Yes.
And
yes.
and that hits them hard a lot of the times. And so there are parents who will, take a step back and reflect and think about what they might have done wrong, or perhaps be also accepting that, yes, they have stepped into adolescence and they'll go through this phase. It'll take a few years, but we'll be with them. And there are others who become so anxious and sometimes even upset about it that they might clamp down on the young person
Yes.
and become more harsh, judgmental, punitive, sometimes taking their privileges away. So there are various kinds of responses that you see from parents and sometimes even for teachers. That also depends on the school the child is attending.
That is important.
Yeah,
That's very
absolutely,
important. The kind of
absolutely.
philosophy the teachers are coming with or the school system is coming with.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because there are schools which are more conventional, they're more rigid, they believe in so-called discipline,
Yes.
that kids have to fall in line, they have to fit in to certain structure that school has provided. And there are other schools which gives the young people, as they grow into this space, more time to
Options.
reflect, options, choices,
Opportunities, yeah.
discussions, safe spaces to ask questions and so on. And obviously those spaces, or whether it is at home or in school, where there is an openness to it, there is an acceptance that these changes will come and we'll have to ride it together, they usually are able to negotiate and help their young people much better. Right. And of course, lastly, the thing that is perhaps as important, if not the most important thing, is that every child that you see is different. The way they will respond to the environment, to discipline, to recognition of their strengths, etc., is going to be different.
One
and to
size
be
does
able
not
to,
fit all.
One size does not
definitely.
fit all.
And that's also the variability even amongst siblings, even amongst children that parents have. Two children can be so different from each other.
Yeah. And it plays out in a way that it never does in any other time in people's lives.
Right.
It's during adolescence, because they're looking for their identity, because they want to understand who they are. Some of these very individualistic traits, the strengths, the challenges that a young person has, begins to become much more amplified. It
Yes.
comes to the fore at that time.
The personality is forming, perhaps.
Exactly.
And it's
exactly.
that formation that we are seeing happening.
Yes. And
Yes.
for the rest of the world around them, parents, teachers, other stakeholders, other carers, for them to understand that, and for the young person also have the space and the comfort of discussing and reflecting on these things becomes very important. Only then are they able to connect to their own selves. Because if you negate it, if you say, you cannot behave like this, you cannot ask these questions, you're being too rude, etc., immediately they're shut down. And they're not then given the space to be able to explore their inner world.
And they're
the other
not,
big thing,
yes.
Yeah. The other big thing that adolescents go through is a lot of self-reflection, sometimes even self-flagellation. If they get a lot of negative messages from the world outside them,
I hear the word rumination a lot. I hear rumination a lot from young people.
Yes. And they know it. And they know that they have this inner space, which is, again, something which they are grappling with for the first time in early adolescence, as opposed to being children, when perhaps their responses to the world is more predictable. They're, not given to so much of introspection, whereas adolescence by nature is a time when young people...
It's more thinking, less doing. Or perhaps thinking becomes very important.
Very important. Thinking, reflection,
yes.
Feeling, experiencing strong emotions. That also is something that they might not have ever done in the past. And some of those conflicting feelings and intense feelings can be equally confusing for the young person themselves.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
Yeah. And just
for
as much.
For the parents.
And for the parents
you've
as well.
You've mentioned, I'm just segueing into a thing which you've mentioned repeatedly, is a safe space.
Yeah.
I want to understand from a parent's point of view, if a parent is listening in, how can they create a safe space for the child or for the teenager to discuss things that might be tough or that might be in conflict with what the parents think or feel?
Right. So the first thing to remember for parents and teachers is that the behavior is the end result of many things that go on in a young person's life and in their minds. And if we respond and react only to the behavior, a lot of the times we are drawing sharp boundaries, we are admonishing them, we are making them feel that whatever they're doing is not right. Mm-hmm. And that makes them withdraw into their own space, right? Mm-hmm. In effect, they're not getting that space to be able to bring out what they're experiencing within, their feelings, yeah? A safe space is where you listen, you reflect together, you ask questions, and you listen with compassion.
Non-judgmental.
Not judgmental, but with compassion.
Yeah.
To understand that what made you say that? You usually are not so rude, What are you feeling now, right? What has made you feel like this? And so on. And that reflection, if we create that space to have that discussion, helps the young person also to look within and say, oh yeah, I wonder why I behave like this. I didn't have to say those harsh words to my mother, but what made me do that, right? And that ability to reflect is actually what helps the young person to make choices, make changes, choose what they want to become.
If they're not being punished, if they're not being judged, if they're simply being allowed to express themselves,
yes,
it allows for better thinking. There we are giving the person individual responsibility and space to be themselves.
Yes. So the first thing is, of course, compassionate listening, understanding. And the second step is to understand that your child is different from anybody else.
Is this scary for parents? Is this scary? For example, not every parent may have a personality which is designed for such conversations. Is this scary?
It can be. It can be scary. It can be scary, confusing. It can evoke a lot of angst and anger sometimes in parents. I think once you have chosen to become a parent, I think it becomes, in a way, your responsibility.
It's your responsibility.
To begin to look within yourself, and if you are not being able to cope with some of what is happening to your child, to make an effort to be able to change yourselves. We often say that one of the times that, adults grow is when they're bringing up children. In fact, they
fantastic.
Grow with the kids.
So true. So true. Yes, yes.
And if they do not make that effort, then they might actually not only not grow themselves, but also end up in some way harming or damaging their children, right? So to be able to actually play that very intimate, adaptive dance, if you might like to call it.
Very nice term, adaptive dance.
Yeah. The relationship between the parent and the child is a dynamic process.
Yes.
As your child grows up, you have to reflect on it. You have to look it within. You have to also grow with it.
And it changes. Every 5-10 years, our relationship with our parents change.
Absolutely. So true. So true. That's very nicely put. I think that indeed our relationship, our equation with our children, it keeps changing, isn't it? And we've experienced it with our own parents also, right?
Yes.
From, being custodians to then becoming partially friends. And then eventually, when you grow older, hopefully they they will be able to,
caregivers.
they can become your caregivers. So it changes throughout your lifespan, isn't it? Yeah? And this is one of the times when it requires a lot of investment, thought, and commitment to be able to make those changes as parents. And teachers and anybody else, any adult who can influence the lives of their children. Yeah.
Do you believe that parents would also benefit from counseling? And this is not because your child is in trouble, but this is simply because you are going through a phase of transition. Do you think preemptive counseling is, if somebody takes upon it?
Of course, absolutely. So that's a choice that often parents do make. We do have parents coming to us, not because their children are having problems, because they want to prepare better. Even when their children are very young, they want to know what they must do. Parenting was not a big thing 20 or 30 years ago. Like, I don't think our parents ever thought of parenting as an issue.
No.
Children grew up. You had to take care of them. You had to do the right things, draw some lines and boundaries, send them to school.
Yes.
And they would grow up.
We were not priority. We just happened. And then life happened alongside. Life was happening, right?
Absolutely. I do think that we got, a good amount of love.
We got love.
And caring in the way they thought was right.
Yes.
But there was no discussion, reflection, contemplation as to what is the right way to do it.
And parenting wasn't an agenda item.
No. In fact, you know what? In the dictionaries, till 20, 30 years ago, parenting was not a term.
Is that true?
Parenthood was.
Parenthood.
So parenting is a new generation thing, and that is because the way our world has changed. We believe that because the world is so much more complex now, if we do not, as parents and caregivers, reflect on it, then we might end up doing more harm to our children than good.
Also because I'm thinking in terms of societal change, earlier the community took care of each other. Right now we are so nuclear that the parents are entirely responsible for their children's upkeep.
So true.
Isn't it?
Absolutely.
So that
That's
probably
another
plays in.
structural and societal change that has happened, which is really big, isn't it? And also because people travel, they migrate, they leave their, family of origin and move to distant places, and they have to fend for themselves, as you said, right? And that makes it so much tougher.
So the nucleus of the family, that becomes the pressure point and the healing point and the go-to for everything.
That's right. That's one. And oftentimes both the parents are working. And you also have a world which is constantly changing. The way the world has changed in the last 20 years, it hasn't done in the previous 200 years. That's the rate of change. We're constantly trying to think and adapt to what will be the right thing to do. How to save our environment, how to keep our children safe. How to deal with pollution or the kind of politics we have today. Everything
so many issues
is constantly changing, is in a state of flux. And to be able to then create a space where children can grow, feeling safe, feeling nurtured, feeling that they have a clear direction ahead of them. There's a clear path.
It's
such a hard thing to do, isn't it?
It's a challenge.
Yeah? So after creating that emotionally safe space where you listen, without judgment, with compassion, the second step is to really understand your child in the unique way they are wired. So we often say at Children First that every child is wired and inspired differently. Yeah, that's a slogan. So we have to look at what makes your child tick. What are the challenges they carry, right?
Yes.
What are the kind of things they are able to do easily? Let's say go to school. Deal with academics, right?
Yeah.
Or make friends, right? Or deal with, let's say, their own intense feelings. Some kids are able to do it better than others. There are other kids who have meltdowns and they can lose control over anger, over, something that overwhelms them. So these are all, we see them as skill sets,
Okay, so you don't see it as something out of the ordinary. You see it as a spectrum of different conditions that every unique person will have.
Absolutely. So, we often say that every child has a different neurodevelopmental profile.
Yeah.
And one of the things we try and do when children come to us for help is to try and chart that out. What is their profile like, right? So that we know where the strengths are and what we can work with. The strengths are also very important for the parents to know, for the school to know, to recognize them, to nurture them, to help the child channelize their energies and feel good about themselves, you see? And equally, where are the challenges? Where do they need the understanding and support? Because they're not being able to do it just as well as some of their peers can, right?
Yes.
So that difference, that diversity is something that we want to become aware of. And as parents, as caregivers, we have to be aware of that in children. And which is again why, whether it is in schools or in even institutions of higher education, you now find massive neurodivergence,
Yes.
I mean, even like institutions like IITs, medical colleges, we now know that at least 15 to 30% young people who get into these, premier institutions,
Yes.
they are neurodivergent. They have ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, learning disabilities,
That's
and so on.
amazing, though.
And it never has got picked up. And they've made it to some of the top institutions without realizing
What
their
challenges they must have faced.
And
What
that's why
challenges they must
so
have
many of them
faced.
begin to, face challenges, and which is
Yes.
why,
So the stress of
suicide
coping.
becomes such a big thing in IITs or in Kota, when these kids are actually coming together to, so-called make their lives and their families' lives.
It's very unfortunate because one of the questions I was going to raise about is academic pressure and how it impacts mental health. And this is so particular to India because, culturally we are so ingrained about academic excellence. It's so important to us as a culture. Do you want to talk a little bit about academic pressure, training centers, the idea of going to a premier college, university, how that's impacting?
So academic achievement and academics is one of the biggest points of distress and stress in young people and families, because I think our ideas of success is still rooted in this, right? And people are trying to change. Schools will say that we don't believe in grades. Don't worry, whatever you do, just put in your best. And at the same breath, the principal standing, for an assembly would say, "Oh, we are so proud of the number of
this
people who have
child."
got 90% and above."
Yes.
So in the same breath, you're actually negating completely
Yes.
what you're trying to kind of hold up as a value. So immediately the children know that that's not true.
Yeah.
What's being said is not true. Like, the parents would say that, don't worry about what your sister's doing. It's okay. You do your best. And then when the sister actually gets into the best college, when a cousin does so, it's a time for celebration.
It's held up as an example of excellence. Yes.
Extended family members are called. It's put up everywhere in social media.
Yes.
Look at how good my child is. And then you're telling the other child, don't
That
worry
it
about
doesn't
it.
matter.
It clearly is a value that,
Yes.
so unknowingly, unwittingly, I think a lot of parents end up giving very dual messages, and that
So
confuses young people.
we are sending these subtle signals,
Yes.
which the children are obviously absorbing. The subtle
Yes.
signal of this is being displayed as a sign of a superiority or excellence or success.
Absolutely.
And that in
Absolutely.
itself is a form of pressure.
It is a form of pressure. There's no question about it, that despite everything, and kids are very smart, they're sharp to pick
of course.
these nuances in communication and what is celebrated and what is not, what gives anxiety or worry to parents and teachers, what makes them angry is something that they pick up from very early, and especially through these phases, and that produces huge amount of stress.
And
academic stress is one of the things.
How do we navigate this as parents? How does a parent internally navigate it? Because children are very perceptive. They know what the parents are feeling irrespective of what the parent is saying. That's exactly the point you made. Is that how do we personally navigate this change? Do I really want my child to be excellent because someone else's child is excellent or a sibling is excellent? What do I want for my child? Do we have clarity on that?
That's exactly what I was saying when I said that we have to do our own introspection. We have to change and grow as human beings. We have to look at our current reality, right? So we have all grown up, with these notions. I remember my mother telling me that either you become a doctor and an engineer, or you can be the sweeper who comes in the morning.
Yeah,
so
there was no choice.
There was no choice in between, right?
Yes.
Today, in today's day, fortunately, there are myriads of different careers and livelihoods that kids can choose from. They can
Many
actually make their
options.
hobby into their livelihood. There are so many different opportunities. And yet, if you look at our generation, the parents' generation, or again, perhaps the more traditional teachers, for them, the yardstick is still getting into an IIT or a medical college or becoming a lawyer or an IS officer. Those are the yardsticks
And still,
of what success means.
do you believe still?
Absolutely. And which is why, kids who choose to, let's say, become a musician or become a cricketer, it's a rare instance when they get wholehearted support, Most of the time, they're seen as a cause for worry, uncertainty. What are they going to do in life? Will they ever settle down? Will they ever become independent? These are questions that are, there in parents' minds all the time. And at that time, it's vital for them to look within and say, where are these anxieties and worries coming from? Is it coming from our own past and the voices that we've heard, the insecurity that we've held?
Yes.
As growing up, human beings and the kind of adolescence we had,
Yes.
where there were no choices. If
The
you did not do it,
the messaging from maybe our parents about
yes,
insecurity,
yes,
or about the
yes.
fact that you have no choice if you don't make it into these careers.
Indeed, indeed. So, what are the definitions of success? What makes a person success? Does it have to be a high-flying job, the corporate ladder, where, or a 5-digit salary as soon as you get out of college?
It's
Owning
confusing.
a BMW at 25. What is the yardstick of success? Those are things that we have to ask, and young people ask them if they get the space, if they feel safe enough.
Yeah.
They ask this of each other all the time. But if they don't begin to talk about in the wider spaces where other people who are decision makers, who can support them,
Parents and
like
teachers.
parents, teachers, institutions,
Yes.
all of that, if they are not ready to listen, then, their opportunities, they become much more narrower. They don't have the resources to be able to use and find their own paths.
And then it presents in psychosocial ways then which we find are not actually normal or as we want them to be.
And that's when the emotional turmoil begins. That's when the anxiety and the depression starts kicking in. That's when the behavioral issues start coming up, when they feel misunderstood, marginalized, criticized or judged. Those are the kind of things those are the triggers that begin to then evolve into mental health struggles or emotional struggles, right? Yeah. So if we are able to factor these things in, if we are able to look at the lives of our young people in a much more broader way, then many of these things we are talking about can become preventative.
So they never occur at all because we've managed the root cause, is what you're saying.
Yes, if you're able to do that, right? So the other thing that I think, again, adults need to remember is that these things are not going to change overnight. Yeah?
No.
It's a 15 years span from 10 to 25.
Requires patience.
It requires patience. It requires understanding. And as we were saying, it requires adults to change with the times, with their young people, to be there for them.
Yes. So it's a journey not only for that individual, it's a journey for the parent as well. It's a journey that we have to take together with our young ones.
And to acknowledge that there will be hardships, there'll be storms that will come, have their back, be there with them when those challenges come, rather than, again, begin to from our own angst and worry, begin to criticize them or say that they've made wrong choices. Look at your company,
how much
look at how much time you have spent on your laptop and your mobile phone, which is why this is where you've landed. During our times, we used to do this and that, and you never listen to us. You're constantly back chatting. All those kind of things then begin to surface, rather than take a step back and say that, I can see that you're really struggling. And I've never seen you be so angry and rude. And I wonder why you're doing that. I'm here to listen. I really mean it. And if you approach it from that point of view, then you're creating that emotionally safe space to be able to have conversations and to have their belief that you are there for them.
Yes.
That's such a big thing.
To create the confidence that my parent believes in me.
Yes, and my teachers.
So it's validation.
Family.
We have to validate what they are experiencing.
Validate, yes. Indeed. Recognize, that they're making an effort. Even all of us make mistakes. We are not always taking the right decisions, making the right choices.
Not at all.
Young people, the least perhaps, because they're learning as they grow up. They're making choices. They're, perhaps not getting the right results. Perhaps they're falling sometimes. And that's part of growing up. You make mistakes and learn. And that's a part of developing what is called resilience, where you face up to a challenge, you go through stress. And if you're able to overcome it with thinking through it, making an effort, getting the support that you require, then, if you're able to overcome it, you develop what is called resilience. So emotionally, you feel stronger, more confident. And the next time you're faced with a challenge, you're much better equipped to deal with it. But you have to fail, you have to make mistakes to be able to get there, isn't it? You can't be lectured and told about it all the time.
So how does a parent support? I want my child to be resilient. And a lot of parents I hear say, oh, they're not as strong as we were. This is a lament that I hear all the time, that my kids are not as strong and, they are very flaky. I don't know, these words are used very often. So how do we create resilience, which obviously the child is trying to build?
Unfortunately, these terms that you talked about, not being strong, being emotionally weak, or flaky, etc.,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
used quite often.
Yes,
And sometimes on their face, sometimes behind their back. But kids know
of
that
course.
adults hold these views about them,
Judging them. Yes.
and that doesn't augur well for their confidence and the validation that you're talking about. Kids need to hear that they're making an effort, that they can do well, that they're capable, and so on. Right? Yeah. So yeah, it's that's a reality in our world today. We often, from our own frustration, from our own anguish, anxiety, worry, often with good intentions, because I mean, adults do worry about their kids.
We are not doubting intention. I
We're
think
not.
we are I think what we are trying to explore is the best ways
I'm
to
so glad you said that,
to
Archana.
navigate
Yeah.
this, right?
We are not doubting
We are not
intention.
doubting
See, most
intentions at
adults
all.
and parents are doing it with the best of intentions,
Yes.
but they don't know how to actually
Yes.
do it in a way that will eventually help the kids, right? Many times when parents and families come to us and they talk about how much investment they've made and they've been with their kids and they've told them so repeatedly, they've given examples, they've sent them to these classes, the coaching, the tutoring, and all of that, best schools, best holidays, and yet look at the end result. So the question we often ask is, this strategy that you've used of pointing out what they're not doing right, etc., has it worked? Has it given you the results that you want? And they're often taken aback. They don't know what to say, and many of them admit that yes, it hasn't been working. For the last many years, it hasn't been working. So what do you do differently then?
Yes.
How do you channelize your care, your intentions of helping your child? The one biggest central thing is to have a good relationship with your child. If you want to influence them, you have to have a good relationship.
Yes. So that's the core. That's the core.
And if you criticize them, if you judge them at the drop of a hat, if you lecture them, that's not about to happen.
It's not about preaching.
It's not about
preaching
that.
at all.
It's not about telling them what's good for them, right? It's about listening and understanding what they're going through. Help, together understanding what their world is like.
Yes.
Understanding what their, calling is, and helping them and supporting them in
And those
that.
thoughts might make us uncomfortable. I think that is also the challenge, right? A parent may not want to hear certain things. So we have to develop the capacity to hear, which may be something very unusual for us or something which we don't know.
Yeah, of course.
It's the newness of things, perhaps.
It's the newness of things, indeed.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, many adults, parents, teachers included, often get worried about the music kids listen to, or the books or the manga they read. All the stuff coming from Korea and Japan now.
Yes.
And the rap music coming from the West. And of course, social media and the influences, the influencers,
the influencers,
and the kind of stuff that the kids have to do to fit in, the kind of personas they have to build in that social media space. Those are very anxiety provoking for adults. The tattoos they get, and beyond that, sometimes the cutting that they start doing when they're emotionally distressed.
Yes.
It's a legitimate way of expressing your anguish, cutting and then taking pictures and showing it to the world that, look, I'm distressed, I'm in trouble. All these things are ways of communicating that young people choose now.
Yeah, they're communicating.
Hugely, anxiety provoking. And of course, other stuff like the violence that they see, in the TV shows and the pornography. How early do kids get exposed to that?
And what kind of impact is that happening on the mind, which is such a young mind?
Absolutely. So we've had kids who have come with marked anxiety, sometimes depression, traumatized sometimes, because they were exposed to pornography when they were 11, 12 years old. And that's the time when kids have, smartphones, and some of their friends are already doing it. And lastly, of course, which is another big thing that causes anxiety and worry, is substances,
Yes.
Of all kinds now, the age is just going down and down.
And there are so many substances to use from. Yes,
indeed,
it's not just one or two things. Let's explore the whole social media space a little bit. I know there are countries like Australia which have banned social media for kids under 16. It just happened in December. And I know there are certain states in our country that are considering it. I'm not sure where things are at. But what do you feel is the role of social media, and what kind of mental health issues? I know you said anxiety a couple of times, but what kind of mental health issues are showing up because of everything that's happening on social media? And there's so many aspects for a young person.
Yeah. So see, the digital space is very complex, right? We are aware that there are many ways that young people and adults also use it in a good way, right? For knowledge, to learn, to
Not
do
only,
research.
not only.
Yeah,
Yes,
not
but
only.
those are the good parts, and
Good
those are very
parts, right?
powerful. Those can
Yeah,
be very powerful
absolutely.
if
And
used
it is
correctly.
a central part of education now. I mean,
Yes.
all the more progressive schools are using it in
Yes.
so many different ways, and colleges and
It's a
universities
mixed
as well.
blessing.
Yeah,
We all accept that.
yeah. On the flip side, when you go into the social media space, right, where you are forming virtual relationships, right, you're becoming a member of a space that has its own rules, and you have to stretch yourself to fit in, right? You have to build a persona, and you
Yes.
have to perform to be able to create an impact. And unfortunately, so many young people are looking for those likes and the thumbs ups
Yes. Even
and the
adults.
smileys,
Even
yeah,
adults. Everyone is
to-
susceptible to it.
Indeed. But you can imagine how the young people are vulnerable to
more.
it, because this is the phase when they're building a sense of identity and whether they're likable or not, right?
Yes.
So the kind of things they do, the way they stretch themselves to be able to get those validations
They're
from the
building a
virtual
life.
space.
They're building a life.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
indeed,
virtual space.
is extreme and maddening, absolutely, right? So becomes a constant preoccupation of how to do this right. Yeah, how to put a persona and an image which people like, which people get impressed by, and people get jealous of, isn't it? It's constant.
So complex.
And the other thing about the social media is that it never leaves you. So one big thing that we always knew that young people require is what is called downtime. So when they experience life, whether it is internal or external, in their peer group, in the sports field, in schools, with education, with their parents and other adults, all that needs time to assimilate and sink in. And for that, they require something called downtime, which is time to do nothing.
When you're doing nothing at all.
Absolutely.
When
Getting bored,
when you're just
reflecting,
looking around,
thinking, daydreaming, and letting all these experiences
absorb.
Get absorbed. Social media doesn't allow you to do that.
That's
because
not
it's
happening.
a constant companion. Even when children, as soon as they wake up, they'll reach out for their phone. Even when they go to their bathrooms, they will carry it with them. There's no respite. There's
So
no
you're
downtime.
saying the anxiety, that is producing extreme anxiety.
Massive anxiety, right? And social media, when it is not controlled, when it goes out of hand, when kids now, this is the other kind of addiction, when they begin to get addicted to social media and screen, then it becomes a complete spiraling out of control kind of a scenario, right? And
how are we dealing with this? How are parents of young kids, of teenagers dealing with this?
so they're not dealing very well, honestly.
It's
Most
tough,
of them,
right?
yeah.
It's tough.
It's a very tough call because of various reasons. Firstly, because screens are an integral part of our lives now.
Now, yes.
Even adults, right?
Yes.
And you can't deny them access to screens because, like we were saying, that whether it is education or recreation and
Yes.
entertainment, or sometimes genuine social connecting
Yes.
with families, connecting with friends,
Yes,
chatting,
it makes
etc.
life easier. It does make life easier.
Absolutely. Those are legitimate things, right?
Yeah.
But then how do you draw that line? One of the ways to draw it, of course, is to categorize the kind of use.
Use, yes.
In the family,
and
have
limit.
discussions that
Yeah.
what do I, and actually chart it. And as an adult, as a responsible adult, also say that I'm going to do that too. I'll see how many hours of screen I use, how much.
So you
how
have to
many
set an
hours.
example. You have to work
You
on
have
it
to.
together.
You
You
have
can't be
to.
on the phone and
You
tell
have to
your
walk
kid
the
that you
talk.
can't
Yeah,
be. You have to walk the talk.
Walk the
Yes.
talk, and then say, okay, I've realized that I actually do too much of scrolling. I've done 1 to
doom
2 hours,
scrolling.
and I am going to stop doing that.
Yeah.
But I will use my phone for other things.
Yes.
For my office work,
Yes, for your
sometimes connecting
emails.
with my friends,
Yes.
and with maybe entertainment, listen
Yes.
to some music.
Yes.
Watch a movie.
Watch a movie. Yeah.
Yes, when the time permits or when I have factored that in. But
Yeah.
I cannot do it mindlessly. And I cannot get carried away with Instagram and Facebook in the way I
Yes.
did.
Yes.
And can we then have a conversation at home as to who's doing how much screen? How do you use it, right?
Very nice. I think that's very interesting. I wonder if there'll be enough families that are open to this kind of open conversation, open to the open conversation.
In our experience, when you put it like that, when they
Yeah.
realize that what they have been doing by taking their gadgets away temporarily, or being very harsh and judgmental about it, or
You can't be.
even sneaking into their phones, etc.
Yes.
Without their consent, etc. They don't work. They boomerang back like how?
Yes, because
See,
there's
again,
a sense of
a relationship is about trust.
Yes.
It's about it's
Yes.
about respect of personal
Also.
boundaries,
Yes,
isn't it? Yeah.
yes.
And when you are, expecting and hoping that your child will respect all those things in you and other people, you ought to do that to them.
Yes.
Yeah. You have to respect them. You have to do things which will make them trust you.
It requires a
Right.
lot of integrity in your own behavior as well. It
Absolutely.
does require a
Absolutely.
whole lot
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
integrity.
yeah. And if you want to actually make a difference in their lives, you have to have a good relationship so that they open up, and show them so that they open up and they are able to kind of, in a very gradual way, one step at a time, show you what's happening in their world,
And what they're
what kind of
thinking.
music they're listening
Yes.
to, who are their friends. When they go out for a party or a get together, will they share some numbers of their friends with you?
Yeah.
That comes from the relationship and the trust that you build. And you have to work hard at it, that connect. You have to invest in it. You have to spend time. You have to look at things that they're doing without judgment.
Time is the
Time
thing.
is the thing
Time
as
is
well.
what people sometimes don't give. Right?
Yeah.
Time is
Yeah.
the one. It's the simplest thing, but it's also the hardest thing.
Yes.
Because we live in a distracted world, don't we?
Absolutely. And like you were saying that, oftentimes parents or sometimes even teachers, schools will say that, oh, you're grown up now, you're 14, you're 15, you have to be responsible. I'm out of your life, you do what you want with it, right? And that's the hardest thing that you can say to a young person who's already struggling with so many conflicts and emotional turmoil, grappling with the world around them, right? They need you the most at that time, probably more than they did when they were 7 or 8 years old.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Over there, some other person could have come and given
done
structure to the
daily
day.
things,
But
yeah.
here they need you emotionally.
Yeah.
They need you as a person who they can turn to when they're in a crisis.
Psychological trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So that and especially once they leave school and turn 18, there is a notion that now you're an adult, you can deal with things, right?
But college is its own turmoil, and college is its own transition, and a huge one.
Absolutely. And they're not out of adolescence yet, you see?
Yeah.
Their brains have not matured. Their frontal lobes, which is, the most, as they say, the most human part of the brain.
Yes.
It helps us to think, to reflect. Metacognition comes from there. It helps with impulse control. It helps to regulate other feelings, It helps with concepts and learning in very, very many different ways, complex
the frontal
ways.
lobe is what
Those
you're
are the
talking
frontal
about.
lobes.
Yes.
And the frontal lobes are the last to mature at 25 or beyond, right? Even the, centers which in the brain, the centers which control language, communication, they are also one of the last ones to actually firm up together.
So it takes us that long to actually mature.
To mature and to be able to communicate properly and all that. So many times when children get upset or young people are going through turmoil, they say things that are, unkind or, sometimes even cruel.
Yes.
They sound, but they may not have much more vocabulary to be able to express it. Or perhaps when they went to or when they tried communicating this in a subtler, more gentler way, nobody heard it.
It didn't get through.
They didn't get through, right?
So then they had to resort to these behaviors.
Absolutely. It's not without reason that these extremes of behavior start emerging.
Yes.
It's a developmental process, you see. So and when of course things go really bad, then you start begin to have the depression, the anxiety, the eating disorders. Those are also expressions of emotional distress, right? The self-harm, the substance misuse. The substances are used for self-medication ever so often.
Yeah.
To control anxiety, to feel better temporarily when you're going through depression.
You're trying to self-heal kind of a thing. That's what
and equally screen addiction. Children who cannot cope with the world outside, they dive into this space which is virtual, which is gratifying. They make virtual friends, right?
So it's more
because
of an
they cannot
escape.
make perhaps friends in the real world. They're not accepted in real spaces.
Or maybe they don't know how to navigate those spaces because they haven't learned to.
Yeah.
So, Doctor, you were talking about how children use different methods or teenagers use different methods to actually take care of the conflict or the anxiety or depression that they're feeling.
That's right. So, when things go out of control in young people's lives and they don't have any other so-called healthy coping mechanisms to deal with the turmoil, the pressure, the conflicts, the growing up things that they have to deal with, that is when they begin to gravitate towards behaviors that in the long run could be counterproductive. They can also, of course, begin to develop signs of anxiety, depression, because they no longer can surmount the challenges. They do not perhaps have the resilience that is required at that time
to cope
with it, right?
What they're facing.
And that's one part of it. That's their internal struggle. But the other big thing is that more often than not, we find that the environment they come from, that's not supporting them either. Nobody is understanding them, It
comes back to support every time. It really is that important.
The compassion, the empathy, the understanding of the challenges, to be there for them when they need you,
Yes.
all of that
Yes.
are important. To gently uh, provide opportunities, open up conversations as well as real time spaces for them,
Yeah.
and ask that, do you think this might work for you?
And
Do
if
you
it
think that, we've slipped somewhere? Can you tell us how we can do this differently? And can we do it together?
so
To
self
have that.
so presenting your own vulnerability as
Yes.
a parent or as a teacher and saying, I may not have understood this correctly, or I may not have the answer. Let's find the answer together.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
also a path
Yes. Yes.
to
Indeed. Indeed.
self-analyze or to show that vulnerability.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So all the things that we have talked about, from neurodivergence to, the kind of stresses and pressures that kids feel due to academics and the choices they have and yet they can't make, interpersonal conflicts, perhaps judgment and criticism that they face at home or in school or other spaces. And many times, something that we haven't spoken about is the bullying and the
Yes.
exploitation that so many kids face.
Yes.
And indeed abuse, physical, sexual. Those are other things that we haven't touched upon. And these are
Yes.
real things,
These are real things, yes.
Child sexual abuse, physical abuse is one of the highest in our country by far.
That's very
Yeah,
unfortunate.
unfortunate.
But
yeah.
not surprising, but unfortunate.
And there are consequences of that, which are deep rooted. So nowadays, trauma also has become a buzzword, and with
Yes.
good reason. Some of the kids and all of us, indeed, have probably had life experiences which were not pleasant at all,
Yes.
which scarred us in some way or the other, right?
Yeah.
And we take a lifetime to get over it after that, right? So kids are going through that as well, right? So all these things contribute to eventually give rise to what we call anxiety, depression, eating disorders, substance misuse, self-harm, and so on, right? But the problem with our approach is that we begin to look at it only when it reaches this crisis point.
Yes, and I was going
Yeah.
to ask you that, are we seeing these problems more? Are we diagnosing them better, or are we actually seeing them more? What have you seen in the last, let's say, so many years of your practice in India?
Both, actually. I think that we have, as a society, as a community, become more aware of it. And I think in some ways, the expressions of these conditions have become more loud and alarming. For instance, young people cutting themselves when they're depressed or anxious is an expression which is shocking
So
to most people.
disturbing.
So disturbing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah? Or the way they have gravitated towards substances and screens
Yes.
is also extremely disturbing.
Yes.
So some of the behaviors that emerge from these conditions, or stopping, not eating,
Yeah.
and not eating in eating disorders, or
Yes.
kind
Anorexia,
of
bulimia.
binging and then bulimia and then purging and stuff
Yes,
like that,
yes.
is so anxiety provoking for everybody concerned, isn't it? Right? So the manifestations of these mental health challenges have become,
More extreme, you feel.
of course they have, but they have also sharply risen because
Yes.
there have been kind of community-based studies that we have had over last many decades, and there's a sharp rise,
So
an
what is
exponential rise,
causing it?
especially after COVID. Do you know?
After COVID.
After COVID, there's a marked increase in it, right? Yeah, because a lot of, anyway, we could talk about COVID as a
subset.
as a subset.
That's going to be
because it
part
has
two. I'm going to ask you to come back again and we'll discuss COVID and its impact. Yes.
Yeah.
But in terms of the sudden rise over the years, what are we doing differently? Social media, of course, I think is a very big trigger. But outside of that, there is so much loneliness that the young
Yes,
complain
yes,
of.
yes.
So what do you think has caused, what are the factors do you think are coming in which are causing these escalations?
So all the things that we talked about, that
Yes.
I think our lives have changed dramatically, and
Yes.
the gadgets and social media has brought in
Definitely.
a completely different and disturbing layer, although it could be beneficial in many ways. But the flip side is that it's creating havoc, and we don't know how to deal with it because it's so new and so fresh.
Yes.
It's like giving, a 10-year-old a bottle of vodka or some cannabis and say, use it responsibly, How do you expect that they will
That's-
actually make the right choices?
That's a very good
Yeah.
example, actually, because we don't realize what the children are getting into.
Absolutely. And we
Yeah.
don't know how to handle it, right? Yeah. So that's one big crisis. And also, despite having more opportunities, how competitive we've become. And if you look at the kind
That's
of
so
socio-political things that is happening,
Yes.
socio-political things happening across the world. Look at the wars that we are fighting everywhere across the world. Look at the polarized politics and the violence in the kind of things people say and do to each other.
Very extreme thinking. There is no moderation.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's not the country or the place that I grew up in.
No.
The space was much safer.
Yes. And it was emotionally safer as
Emotionally safer,
the dialogue was
physically
different.
safer.
Yes.
The conversations were different. You
Yes.
could have different ideologies, politically or otherwise, but you could sit together and have a conversation. Who does that now? And those are also things that are impacting young people. Environment is impacting young people. They often, particularly the ones who are, perhaps slightly more aware and better read, or are concerned about the environment. They have had their families or schools
Yes, and they do
holding
worry.
this up as a reality. Those kids, if you talk to them, they'll turn around and tell you that, what have you left for us? What is the world that you've left for us?
What kind of a planet have you made?
What kind of a planet have you made?
Yes.
And now you want us to get this right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that even fair to ask, that of them?
Social responsibility is not something that they can look up to.
That's right.
They haven't
and these young kids often feel that our generation has failed them big time.
Yes.
Yeah? So this is a big burden to carry, and these are the things that are contributing to the mental health crisis that we are going through, right?
Yes.
And again, when we look at it from the lens of just making a diagnosis and treating it, the so-called biomedical lens, right?
Yes.
So there are diagnostic criteria. Somebody comes to you, you take a history, you do an examination,
you
tick
do
the
an
boxes,
assessment.
you say that, you have ADHD, you have depression, here, do this and you'll be okay. But is that good enough? I mean, they have come to you after a series of things that have happened in their lives.
Many experiences.
Many
disappointments.
And if you do not address it, is it even fair to put it on the young person and say, you need to sort this out, take these medicines and make sure you develop resilience and don't go towards screens and drugs anymore, That's not the right thing to do. Do yoga, do exercises, you'll get better.
We are not even touching the fundamental issues.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, is that even possible for a young person who's already struggling?
Very
and
well
perhaps
expressed.
struggled for, years, months and years.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have to take a more systemic lens. We have to step back. And the biology and the neurodevelopmental aspects are important. It's important to understand, as we said, how differently kids are wired. And, and there are some mental health conditions that could be inherited, like, the neurodevelopmental, deviances or differences are often inherited.
Yes.
And so can sometimes depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia.
Those can also
Those
be
are
inherited.
extreme kinds of, mental health disorders. But the large part of what we are dealing with right now, the kind of depression, anxiety, self-harm, substance misuse, eating disorders,
also,
these are all
environmental,
hugely embedded in the social, cultural, political context, isn't it?
Yes.
And unless we try to or start addressing those, we'll never be able to solve for the so-called illnesses and the mental health disorders.
Yeah.
See, other countries have done it. I mean, if you look at, the kind of investment we make in our young people's lives, creating infrastructure, understanding their development in a holistic way, looking at mental health and emotional well-being, the budgetary allocation is a minuscule.
So we are not even looking at it as a health condition.
Yeah. But other countries have, like the US is one of the, biggest kind of budgetary contributions towards mental health.
How can we provide mental health support? What kind of support would you like to see for your youth?
If we can take their examples, the West's example. So they have all kinds of training institutions, research on drugs, on therapies. They'll tell you which therapy is the best, that CBT is cutting edge, and so on and so forth. What has that done to their mental health? Has it improved it? Not at all. In the last decade or two, it's only become worse.
Yes.
Depression, suicides. Depression is the number one cause of disability in the US and in the world, more than heart diseases. It's the number one cause of disability right now. It's constantly increasing. So despite all the investment in this space, in a biomedical kind of an approach where you treat people after it's happened. Yeah?
So we need to get to the root cause.
Absolutely.
To fundamentally look at what are the things that
the world is beginning to wake up to that now. They're understanding that this model is not going to cut it. Yeah.
Because you're treating the disease. Yeah, you're treating the disease.
The disease. Yeah. You're not actually addressing all the different determinants. And for that, everybody has to be a stakeholder, right?
Yeah.
So the state, the policymakers, the educators, the parents, the people who run public transport, or run parks for children and to keep it safe, the people who are looking at environment so that children don't get locked up for months together in places like Delhi and North India and cannot even go out and,
that in itself takes you towards screens because
absolutely.
you cannot go play.
Absolutely. Look at the wide range of things that we have to grapple with to be able to begin to make a difference in this space for children.
But that is the bird's eye view. But also, just to be the devil's advocate, if a parent is listening in and they're saying, how can I help my child? So what I'm hearing is that the parental support makes all the difference in the world.
A lot of it. Not all, though.
Not all.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay, maybe not all.
It's not, because you see,
there are outside influences.
The best, there are. I mean, the education system, there are, like neurodivergence, right?
Yes.
And there can be a set of parents in a family who are very understanding and accepting of it, and they want the best, but they do not have the educational pathways. They do not get the support that any person would require
a neurodiverse
from the state,
individual wouldn't.
from the infrastructure.
That is so true.
Right?
That is so true. Yeah.
From starting from education to recreation to support to acceptance in the society. So you take a young person, a child who's different in the way they behave or the way they communicate, etc. Everybody's turning around and looking at them.
Yes.
They don't want to come near them. They'll walk away.
We are very low on acceptance even now as a society.
So averse to accepting differences and disability. Yeah.
Because there's a premium on some sort of perfection.
Yeah.
We have this whole premium attached to a package of perfection.
So the point I was trying to make, Archana, is that, if a family is really receptive and they are accepting and they do what they can, yet sometimes the infrastructure,
it is a social construct.
It's a social construct. Indeed. Totally.
And also, I want to talk a little bit about red flags. So, for example, if young people are going down a path where there is distress, where there is conflict, how does a family or an academic institution know that there are red flags where support is needed? If support is not being, looked out for.
The tricky bit is that adolescence is a phase when there will be, some rebellion, some mood swings, pushing of boundaries,
But how do we differentiate?
Challenging as adults. That's a part of growing up. That's what they're supposed to do. If they did not do that, the world will never change, isn't it?
Yeah, they are
clones.
They are the ones who are actually thinking through these things.
And they have to do that to be able to make a difference,
bring about
change.
Yeah?
It's a part of growing up. So taking chances is something that adolescents, every human being does it, but they do it the maximum during this phase, also because their brains are driving them to do this, right? Massive changes in certain pathways, the so-called dopaminergic pathways, the reward systems, etc. The limbic system, which houses all the feelings and emotions, they become pulsating much more stronger during adolescence. It drives them to do things which are, on the surface, in terms of behavior, becomes shocking or alarming.
This is a hormonal manifestation. Everyone talks about
the brain is also changing.
Teenage hormones, all of those things.
So in the brain also, there is a process called arborization and pruning.
Okay.
So from the age of about 9, 10, the brain suddenly, or the neuron, starts sprouting. Like, it happens after monsoon.
Like a plant.
Like a plant which just goes berserk and, you have like wild growth, and they're trying to form connections with other neurons, right? And while this is happening at one end, as the child is going through the teenage years, there's another process which starts, which is called pruning. So the connections which are not used, are weak,
which are not connecting to each other,
they are pruned.
Oh, okay.
Yeah? And the ones that are used repeatedly, those are the ones that become more robust.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that process of pruning also creates a lot of turmoil and confusion. So a child who is otherwise very organized and would focus on things may stop doing that when they're 13 or 14. They may become more scattered. They might start losing things, may not be able to sit and complete their homework, which they could do earlier because of the pruning that's going on. Because there's a lot of,
that's very interesting, actually.
Turmoil and change that's going on, even anatomically, physiologically. Yeah.
So this is almost something that's happening on its own organically. Nobody's done anything, and yet it's
so it's
probably
not just the hormones; it's the restructuring of the brain in a way,
right.
And that happens for 15 years. So that is what we mean when we say that the brain is matured, because all these pathways, they in a way come together and firm up by the time a young
But
person is 25
parents,
or sometimes more.
parents need to be educated about this, don't you
Yes,
think? Because
yes.
if we don't know,
Mhm.
so for example, a lot of parents will say, oh, 18, 21, he's old enough to drive, she's old enough to take responsibilities, have a passport, they're obviously old enough to take care of their life.
Yeah.
So then the question is, doctor, how much support is too much support and how much support is too little, right? Because those are also questions.
Sure, sure. So there are no easy answers to that, Archana. I
No.
think it varies from person to person,
Yes, of
one
course.
child to the other,
Yes.
the phase of life they're going through.
Yeah.
Again, coming back to your question as to when do we raise the red flag,
Yes.
right?
That was the initial question, actually.
So when some of these behaviors become more entrenched, they become more chronic, and they're beginning to interfere with other developmental milestones, such as, let's say, typically speaking, when children begin to slip down the slope of mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, and so on.
And daily life, they're not able to manage their daily life.
Yeah. For instance, they're
That's
not
a
able
flag,
to
no?
take care of things that they could have done in the past. So, you can see that there is a deterioration
Drop.
in functions such as sleep and appetite, to start with, biological functions, right? Their focus goes down, their grades begin to fall. They can't even do the extracurriculars that they used to so love. They'll refuse to go for their cricket coaching, or won't pick up the guitar to play music anymore.
Things they liked.
Things they liked, yeah. There's, again, social withdrawal. They begin to withdraw from friends. They don't want to face up to that, right? And even if when they go, they'll say that I have to put up a facade. I have to behave as if nothing is wrong.
Feel like
because I'll be judged otherwise by my own friends, right? So they will put up a facade during those times. And then when it becomes worse, then there are behavioral issues, oppositional defiant behavior, rudeness, and then eventually aggression, relationship difficulties, violence even.
Also
then
withdrawal.
The self-harm.
Sometimes withdrawal also.
Social withdrawal is one big part of it.
And how can a caregiver, parent then intervene when there are red flags presenting themselves?
So when all these things begin to happen as a cluster, and there's a clear change from how your child used to be, then it's time to kind of look closer and see what's happening. So you can start by trying to have conversations. You can then maybe talk to their teachers and see if those changes are more universal,
closed, or if they're closed at all.
Yes.
And
they shut down.
You don't want to wait forever for a crisis to happen.
Absolutely, you don't want to wait forever.
Yes.
So at that time, it may be a good idea to perhaps get some support yourself. Again, like I said, from teachers, from extended family, from a brother or a sister, or somebody else who knows a little more about it. And if that doesn't work, then maybe look for professional help. So when the time comes, and of course, when there's clear self-harm, or there's very serious substance misuse, or whether there is screen addiction and you can't get your child out of the screen, do what you do, nothing works. So there are many telltale signs of screen addiction as well. And so there are people who might be able to inform them. There is a lot of material in the net also, but then that becomes a double-edged sword, because you begin to read about it, you get so anxious when you think that, oh my God, has my child developed this? Is this an eating disorder? Is this...
because mental health information is very relatable in many different ways. So anyone can patch on anything. And so my point was that there is a step and there is a point in time where you probably need to seek professional help. And that is something also parents and families should not shy away from.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so if you are seeing those triggers or those red flags, it may be time to access the professional help as well.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. Yeah. Although, again, I would say that usually should be the last resort. That should be the last resort, you believe? Of course. It should be the last resort, because we should not have allowed it to reach that place in the first place.
We don't want a crisis. Of course,
in every child, it is preventable, In your heart, you believe that it should not reach there, because there's so much we can do before that. Much before that. That's what you're saying. That's what I'm hearing from you. That's what I believe in. I believe that so much more can be done before it reaches a crisis like that. So I'm not saying that we can prevent these kind of crises, self-harm, suicide, substance misuse completely. We can't eradicate these things, right? But sometimes children are in boarding schools, or they're at universities far from home. And even then, parents would like to stay involved and understand what's happening to the mental health of their children, right? Of course. So in that sense, one should be aware of what's going on. That's why I was asking you this question also. That's true. So, other things like, what do we do to, say for instance, if we take another analogy of how we take care of physical health in our kids, right from the time, a mother's pregnant with her child, the mother's health, the growth of the baby intrauterine, as soon as the baby is born, how to make the delivery as safe as possible, as soon as the baby is born, the
How to keep it
comfort,
safe.
the physical care,
We are
the
monitoring everything.
vaccinations,
Yes. True.
the nutrition, taking the child immediately to a doctor when there is any kind of physical health challenge or
Yes.
fever, any other manifestation of physical illnesses. We're constantly doing that.
Yes.
We're teaching our children how to eat well, how to exercise, how to take care of themselves, of hygiene, of self-care. All that is geared towards protecting you from developing more serious physical illnesses.
Yes.
It's a preventative strategy that we have developed, which is a part of our system.
Yes. The first 4 or 5 years between pregnancy and early childhood, you're absolutely right.
Even afterwards,
Yeah.
during teenagers, we oftentimes, we will take them for regular health checkups,
me
to the
too.
nutritionist. If we have
Yeah.
to, if they have an injury, let's say playing a sport, we'll
Of course.
immediately take them to a
Of
doctor.
course. Of course.
If your child is emotionally hurt, do we do anything about it?
Yeah.
If they come back, and cry and get into their room and slam the door, we'll probably say, get over it. I mean, you should be able to handle your
That's so
relationships
true.
better.
The difference between the
difference
physical
between that. What do
ailment.
we do to empower or to help young people with their mental health? Do we look at attachment? Do we look at, the bond between mother and child? Do we look at neurodifferences as they're growing up and going to school? The challenges they face in making friends, in picking up academics? Do we look at the bullying or the othering that might happen, in school and in other spaces like the playground? Do we look at emotional literacy of helping children to understand their own selves better? Talking about feelings, talking about sadness, of jealousy, of anger, and what to
Giving it
do with
vocabulary,
it.
giving it words.
Giving it vocabulary.
Yeah.
Because if we did those things, then they'll be much better equipped to themselves come to you and say, you know what, I don't think I'm doing too well. Are you willing to listen to it then?
But you've given them a voice way
Yes.
earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or if they come back from school or other places and say that, you know what, I couldn't eat my tiffin because nobody sat with me and I was crying in the bathroom, right? Yeah. And what do you say? I mean, why did you do that? I'm going to go and complain to the teacher that nobody, or you say that, you have to toughen up. Just crying is not going to help you, right? Yeah. So when they get responses like that from adults, then again we were talking about the safe space. They do not have the the tools or the resources, even emotionally, cognitively, to be able to deal with it. We are not doing anything to help our young people to understand themselves better. We are not giving them the space to be able to deal with it. Right?
So it starts very early on.
It starts very early, indeed.
It starts
And
very
these are the
early.
current concepts in mental health that is now, although still in the periphery, is doing the rounds. And there are many people who are writing about it and are discussing
But
this.
is more
how
encouraging.
preventative this is.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is more encouraging than dealing with crisis or dealing with. I mean, we have to deal with symptomatology and we have to deal with conditions, but to be able to look at it earlier, much earlier, is
Much earlier.
so much more optimistic, I feel.
Yeah.
This has been pretty amazing, and we are running short on time.
Yes.
So, as your parting thoughts, I want to know what you'd like to say to parents of children, or actually the youth, teenagers, those who have very, very young kids, not very young, those between 10 and 25, like you're saying. What kind of message would you like to send?
I would say that, to have an influence in your child's life, you have to work on your relationship and get to know their world better. And for that, you need to develop the trust and the respect that is vital for any relationship. Yeah, that's one thing I would say. I would also say that difficulties, challenges, and storms will come. And if you're able to be there for your child and weather it together, then both of you become stronger from it. So view those challenges with compassion and believe that this will also get over. Because growing up is a lifelong process and perhaps the most dynamic and vexing perhaps during adolescence. So give some space, so have the compassion, give your children respect and the belief that they also have their resources to be able to make good decisions, to be able to make good choices.
Respect and trust.
Respect, trust, and
communication.
believe that they can also take good decisions, to make your decision collaborative. And that's the last thing I would say. it's a collaborative space.
Collaborative space. Excellent.
Collaborative
Well
space, yeah.
said. Thank you so much, Dr. Amit. This was such an interesting conversation, one of the most interesting conversations we've had so far.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Archana.
Thank you
so
for
much
being with
indeed.
us. Hope you like this show. Please do like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Please also follow us on Instagram at the Thoughtful Medic Podcast. Also, please share your feedback in the comment section of each of these. It will really help us to create content which is based on your needs. Additionally, do share with your friends if you liked what you saw, and keep tuned in for future episodes of the Thoughtful Medic Podcast.